Hello everyone and welcome back to another deck guide, this time featuring the dreaded Skull Servant archetype. This is an aggro deck, which we do not have a whole ton of in Yu-Gi-Oh!, but the entire point is that we are trying to put one or more 10,000 plus attack bodies on the field going second and just OTK the opponent. If filling your graveyard to make giant guys and just swinging with them sounds fun to you, then let's get started. So first up is the titular Skull Servant. For some reason, at some point, Konami decided that this random one-star tiny little vanilla in one of the very first sets ever, might have been the first set, I didn't check before this, I probably should have. But anyways, at some point they decided that he needed to retrain and in fact an entire archetype. So we play two of them, not because we ever want to see them, but because we can send them from our deck to our graveyard with other cards, and that powers up our other cards. Next up is the first important and the most important card in the deck, and that is King of the Skull Servants. So this guy, same thing, one-star Dark Zombie with a question mark for his attack. Well, what does that mean? Well, his original attack is the number of King of the Skull Servants and Skull Servants in your graveyard times 1,000. And then if it is destroyed in battle and sent to the graveyard, you can banish something to bring it back. That is sometimes relevant, but not often, because the entire point is to make him so big that he never gets destroyed in battle. Which I should point out that this deck has kind of the same thing that Harpy does. Harpy makes all of its monsters turn into Harpy ladies. This deck makes all of its monsters in the graveyard turn into Skull Servant himself. So basically every archetypal monster in your graveyard gives King of the Skull Servants another 1,000 attack. It is not difficult to make him go 10, 12, 13,000 attack in this deck, and you can have multiples on the field. Next up is Wight Princess. We play two of these. You could play one, you could play three. She doesn't matter too terribly much, but in addition to being a Skull Servant while in the graveyard, if you normal or special summon her, you can send a Wight Prince from deck to the graveyard, which is fairly important because that puts a total of 3 bodies in the graveyard when that happens. And then, quick effect, you can send her from hand or field to the graveyard to make all monsters on the field lose attack and defense equal to their level or rank times 300. So that means that your King of the Skull Servants loses 300 attack. Oh no, but the opponent's Blue Eyes White Dragon loses 2,400 and goes down to a measly 600 total. So she just kind of makes the opponent's stuff smaller while our stuff doesn't really care about that effect to ensure our ability to OTK. Then our new support, which is basically our only one-card starter outside of 1-for-1, Moissa Wight. So, in addition to being Skull Servant while in the graveyard, if this card is normal or special summon, you can add a Skull Servant or a card that mentions it from deck to hand, so that is, the entire archetype is searchable off of Moissa Wight, which is always great to see. But it does lock you into special summoning only zombies for the rest of the turn. We do not mind nor care. And then it also makes it so you can normal summon an additional zombie while he's on the field. So you can normal summon him, search, for example, just Wight Princess, normal summon the Wight Princess, trigger her effect to send Wight Prince, get a bunch of stuff in the graveyard. It's pretty cool, and then you can link these off into a Vampire Sucker. Well, what does Wight Prince do when sent to the graveyard? I'm glad you asked, because Wight Prince, in addition to also being a Skull Servant while in the graveyard, if sent to the graveyard by any means, doesn't have to be card effect, you can literally just link him off. It allows you to send a Skull Servant, the original vanilla Skull Servant, and the Lady in White from hand or deck to the graveyard. So you get to send 2 extra bodies that both count as Skull Servants on top of himself. And then you can also banish 2 Skull Servants and this card from your graveyard to special summon a King of the Skull Servants from your deck. So that is kind of costly. It costs you, in terms of attack, 3,000 damage on your Skull Servant to do that effect, but if all of your milling doesn't hit a King of the Skull Servants, then you kind of have to use his effect to put one on board. But you're really hoping not to have to use the second effect, and you just want to send him to the graveyard for 3 extra bodies. So then next up is one of the better cards in the deck, Wight Baking. So, Wight Baking, in addition to becoming Skull Servant in the graveyard, you can discard it to prevent the destruction of one or more level 3 or lower zombies you control on the field by battle or card effect, which is cool sometimes if you keep him in hand for protecting your King of the Skull Servants. But more importantly, if this card is sent to the graveyard by any means, including just linking it off, you can add 2 monsters with different names from your deck to your hand, besides himself, that mention or are Skull Servant, and then discard one of them. So if you manage to just say link off Wight Baking into Almirage, you can grab your king and a white, discard the white, which triggers to send 2 more bodies to the graveyard. That's 4 bodies in there already, and then you have the king to just like normal summon by any means, and you've got, you know, a 4,000 attack beater just off of using Wight Baking. Then we have the Lady in White. She's mostly just here because you can send her off of White Prince, but you can actually put her on the field, and she's kind of relevant sometimes, because your face-up level 3 or lower zombies cannot be destroyed in battle and are unaffected by spells and traps, so they kind of makes all of your stuff a tower, but mostly she's just here to get sent off of White Prince. Then we've got White Lord as our final archetypal monster that we are playing. White Lord is really, really good, and I feel like he is a very well-balanced card because this card would see so much play in, like, Tearlaments if it was not locked specifically into this archetype as well as it is, because it is just an absolute power card. So you can discard this card from your hand or send it from the field. If you have a Skull Servant or King in your graveyard, very simple to do in this deck, and then mill cards from the top of your deck to the graveyard up to the number of Skull Servants and Kings of the Skull Servant in your graveyard. So you want to save him for the last thing you do, because if you manage to put 5 things in the graveyard, you discard him, he sees himself in the grave, so that makes it 6. You get to mill an additional 6 cards from the top of your deck. He is the reason that this deck does not have trouble milling most, if not all, of its entire deck. He just doubles all of the mill that you've done the entire turn. It's crazy. And then he also has a really good second effect where you can banish him from the graveyard to special summon a King of the Skull Servants from your graveyard. So that is why you would rather not use White Prince. You really want to mill the king and then banish your lord to get your king back, because it only costs 1 card, so 1,000 attack, rather than costing 3. Then for our only archetypal spell that we're playing, we have Wight Reanimator, and this makes our King of the Skull Servants do piercing damage, which is dope, because if the opponent for some reason put all of their stuff in defense, we can still just kill them very easily. And then, even better than that, you can target a King of the Skull Servants in your graveyard, send a Skull Servant or a monster that mentions it from the deck to the graveyard, lock yourself into zombies for the rest of the turn, and summon the one that you targeted from your graveyard. So you can target the king himself, and then send a Wight Baking. That triggers Wight Baking's thing to send a prince and grab a lord, and then mill just as much as you just did again with the lord. You've got like a 10,000 attack king just because you had a king in the graveyard and Wight Reanimator to bring it back. You can also use this if you're kind of sputtering and like your combo's fading a little bit, because this is not a linear combo deck by any means. You can use Wight Reanimator to bring back White Prince and link it off a second time, because White Prince's effect to send is not once per turn. That's why we play 2 Lady in White and 2 Skull Servants, because we can very, very regularly send White Prince to the graveyard twice in a single turn. That's just 4 mills total off of that one card. And it also lets you send another thing from deck when you do that. It's just, Reanimator's a crazy good card in this archetype specifically. Then we've got some non-archetypal support, so we play a couple of Mizukis and 3 Gozukis. You can technically play as many of these as you want, or as few of each of these as you want. I like Mizuki because if you manage to mill it or send it to graveyard from your hand, you can then banish it to summon back your King of the Skull Servants without losing any attack, because they don't gain attack off of zombie monsters, only Skull Servants themselves. So Mizuki is a way to get it back without losing the attack. And that's pretty cool. I only play 2 just because we want to keep this deck at about 40, and I prefer the Gozuki because Gozuki is actually a starter for the deck. Gozuki is a little bit more complicated in that if you can put it on the battlefield anyway, then you can send a zombie from deck to the graveyard, which just starts all of our Skull Servant shenanigans, and then if it gets sent to the graveyard, you can banish a zombie besides himself to special summon one from hand. We don't use that effect a whole ton in this deck because we don't like to banish our zombies from the graveyard, and we honestly, most of the stuff in our hand we would rather just be in the graveyard, but we really like that first effect to send something. Then we play one Tearlament Shiren because you can just special summon her from hand, send something from hand to the graveyard, which we love already, and then mill 3, which we love even more. So we can technically use her grave effect, where if she gets sent to the graveyard, you can fusion summon using her to get the super poly targets out of our extra deck. We don't care that much about that. We really just love the fact that she lets us send something from hand, then send 3 from the deck, and she's an extra body to go into some Link stuff. So, you know, she's just a really good card, and we are allowed to play one of her, so we're going to. Then 1-for-1 is our only other real 1-card combo in the deck, and it's basically just here to send something from your hand to the graveyard, which we appreciate, to summon a Moissa Wight to do the Moissa Wight 1-card combo. Easy. 4th copy of Moissa Wight. Then we play a Foolish Burial, because Foolish Burial lets us send something from our deck to the graveyard. It's, you know, simple as that. We want stuff sent to the graveyard. Then we play some spicy stuff for our non-engine. So card destruction allows us to discard everything in our hand to draw that many cards again. People don't play a ton of card destruction anymore because it is technically a -1, and it does do the same thing for your opponent, so they might see a new hand trap that they didn't have after you use card destruction, which we don't love to see. But the ability to send all of our monsters that really want to be in the graveyard and really want to be sent to the graveyard all at once is just so good in this deck. Then, because we are a going second deck, we play a bunch of board breakers. So we play 3 of Forbidden Droplet, because Forbidden Droplet's a really good card in the first place, but it also has the words send any number of cards from your hand to the graveyard. We love that line of text. So we get to discard a bunch of stuff, and then have a bunch of the opponent's monsters attack and negate their effects. Importantly, this is also a quick effect, so if we use one of our other board breakers, for example Lightning Storm, and then the opponent tries to respond, we can use Droplet sending the Lightning Storm. Lightning Storm's effect will still resolve, and it can't be affected by whatever they were doing on the field. We can negate whatever's trying to affect it if it's a monster. So it's just, you know, Sky Striker uses that whole line of play a lot. We can just abuse it as well. Then we play 3 of Super Poly, along with the package for that in the extra deck, because Super Poly says the word discard 1 card, and we love that. And in addition to Super Poly just being a really good card in the first place, we love the common targets for it even more than most decks do, and we'll talk about that in the extra deck. Then we play 2 of Lightning Storm. This is almost always just going to be targeted at spells and traps, because we do suffer to mass disruption spell and traps, like Karma Cannon, for example, just kind of ruins our whole day. We are hell-bent on ending the game in 1 turn, and if someone manages to have something that delays that game ending of ours, then, you know, we probably lose. We actually win against a lot of meta decks and good disruptions fairly frequently, but if we cannot close the game in 1 turn, we put up no disruptions whatsoever for the most part, and then we just lose. So we really want to make sure that back row is clear before we start doing anything, because the front row is easy to take care of through combat and with Droplet and Super Poly. Onto the extra deck. We do not use a ton of stuff in the extra deck, so we have Almirage, and Almirage is just here to allow us to link off one of our Skull Servants. So if we have a White Prince in hand, we can normal summon White Prince, link it off in Almirage, trigger the effect, send a couple things to the graveyard. That's all he's here for. I'm not even sure what his text says, because it's not terribly relevant in most decks that actually play him. Then we play 1 Relinquished Anima, which is more relevant in most decks, because this can only be made off of a level 1 monster. Thankfully, the vast majority of our cards are level 1 monsters, so we can make him easily. And then, once you make him, you can target a monster that he is facing and equip it to the Relinquished Anima, gaining a bunch of attack. So Anima is just a really powerful disruption that you can go into off of any one of our bodies while you're trying to break the opponent's board. If, for example, they have like a big important card in the extra monster zone and it happens to point onto our field, we can turn anything into Anima pointing straight at it using its own link zone and then activate Anima to equip it, and they have to be able to respond to that, in which case that's less disruptions for our primary game plan, or they just lose that big boss monster of theirs. It's a very strong card that you can only play in level 1 decks. Then we play an SP Little Knight, because SP Little Knight is 2 disruptions that we can sometimes go into if we are forced to go first, or we know that we are not going to be able to defeat the opponent in one turn. Again, she's not normally enough to close out the game on her own. Like 2 disruptions that are fairly simple to play around doesn't do it in this day and age, but it's the best we got. Then we play a Vampire Sucker, because you can link your zombies off into Vampire Sucker to get them in the graveyard and trigger their effects, and that's the primary reason that we play her, but she also does have one relevant thing that she can do, which is if you summon a card from graveyard while she's on field, you draw an extra card, which is pretty cool. She can also summon things from the opponent's field to their field. We don't really abuse that in this deck. We don't mind if the opponent's board is clear or if they have attack position stuff, but we don't like them having things in defense position. So unless we are desperate and kind of sputtering and we really need that card draw, we never use that effect. Then we've got our Super Poly package, which consists of Garura and Mudragon of the Swamp. So Garura first, it does double battle damage, which helps us close out the games when he's on the field, after you make him with 2 of the opponent's monsters with the same type and attribute, which is pretty common to be able to do off of Super Poly. That's why he is one of our targets. Double damage is nice too, just to kill the opponent easier if we for some reason can't make a huge King of the Skull Servants, or god forbid it gets like called by or something, we have to cobble together 8,000 damage some other way. Garura is a decent chunk of that. And then if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can draw a card, so you can also just link it off for SP, get a free card draw, which is not too bad. Then for Mudragon, you can make this off of 2 monsters with the same attribute but different types, and this one allows you to declare an attribute, make this card that attribute. We are almost always going to be declaring Dark in this deck, and no one can target this card or any monsters on the field with the same attribute as this card with card effects. So you declare Dark, and then no one can target any of your Dark monsters or the Mudragon itself, which includes your King of the Skull Servants, which just gives it some protection as you're going in for the kill. We do not mind that at all. Then we've got some XZs that see rare play, but we will play them sometimes. So Lyrilusc Ensemble Blue Robin requires 2 level 1 monsters, and we can do that pretty easily, and we make her going first if we can, because if your opponent special summons a monster while she's on the field, you can detach a material to return that special summon monster to the hand. That's not once per turn. So if we can make her with 2 or sometimes even 3 materials, that is 2 or 3 disruptions. That's one of the more powerful ways we can actually put disruptions on the field going first in this deck. But she's tiny, so she's easy to go to battle and just like swing with a normal summon monster and get rid of her, because we're only making her with like 2 or 3. She gains 500 attack for each material, so that means that she's going to be like 1,000 to 1,500 attack in our deck. Pretty easy to get over unless they're playing Sprite. Then we play Assembled Nightingale, also a Lyrilusc, because Assembled Nightingale allows you to attack directly while protecting herself from targeting and destruction effects, so that we can then go into Downerd Magician after combat, and then go into Zeus. So this line is pretty common. You swing with her, even if you have to detach a material, that is 1 material left on her, and then you can go into Downerd, which has 2 materials, then Downerd into Zeus, which now has 3 materials, can wipe the entire board. The game doesn't normally last long enough while we are maintaining a position to do this line, but we do not use the extra deck very much, and we are locked out of much in the extra deck, so this is kind of just a package that comes up 1 in 100 games that is good to have. We also play a Ripple Bird. Ripple Bird is kind of a desperation move. You can make it off of 2 level 1s, and then you can detach a material to target a monster on the field and change its battle position. So you can force an opponent that has gone completely defensive into an attack position monster so that we can swing through for the kill with King of the Feral Imps. That, I would argue, comes up more often than the Zeus line. But, you know, still we don't want to have to do that because 2 materials attached to Ripple Bird is less attack for our king. We don't love that. Then we also just have Typhon. I don't know if I'll ever use the Typhon, but we have the extra deck space, and you can summon him with just 1 monster you control, bounce something, and turn off anything 3000 attack or bigger to hopefully survive a turn in the grind game. If we are in the grind game, we are not looking great in the first place, so he doesn't see a whole lot of play, but, you know, you can play him sometimes, I don't know. And then importantly, I want to talk about the extra deck. What the hell are the Primites doing here? Well, you can see that we play vanilla monsters. So what I would recommend is if you have the Primite engine, please do not buy the Primite engine specifically for this deck. It does not matter enough. But, wait, where's my 3rd Lordly Load? Where'd that go? I don't know, take out a Meowls. You should be playing the 3 Lordly Loads. I don't know what happened there. But so the Primite engine is a very powerful going first control engine that allows you to get one of the better disruptions in the game right now on the board. You just have to be playing vanillas in your deck to take advantage of this engine. Thankfully we are, and while we are not a going first deck, so we do not want these cards in our main deck, if you own the Primite engine already, you can throw it in the sideboard, and then bring it in during games 2 or 3 when you know the opponent is going to force you to go first, because this engine allows you to summon 1 to 2 extra disruptions over what just the Skull Servants themselves can do. So, how it works is Ether Barrel, when normal summon, allows you to set a Primite spell or trap, then you can tribute it to send a normal monster to the graveyard, which is actually kind of relevant, and during your standby phase he comes back to your hand every turn. So what you're going to set most of the time, unless you already have one in hand, is Primite Lordly Load, which when activated allows you to add a Primite card from deck to hand besides itself, and then you can also declare a normal monster name, special summon that normal monster from hand, deck, or graveyard, but it turns off special summon monster effects on that turn. We do not really care about that, but you can just declare Skull Servant, summon one from the deck, and what you're actually adding off of Lordly Load is going to be Drill Beam. Drill Beam is a quick play, which is very important. It means you can use it on your opponent's turn, that allows you to reveal a Primite card or a normal monster in your hand, or if you control a normal monster or a high-level Primite, you can activate it without revealing, and then target 1 face-up card on the field, negate and banish it. And every turn during your main phase, you can set this card from the graveyard. So it is one of the better possible ways to disrupt an opponent. Negate and banish is really strong, that we can use every single turn. We just kind of want it for the 1 turn so that we can ride through a forced going first. We can also use Ether Barrel, and if we have, like, say, a Skull Servant in hand already, we can summon one off of Lordly Load, slap those 2 into an SP Little Knight. That's another disruption. It's just, it gives you 1 to 2 extra disruptions going first, so if you have the engine already, throw it in the side deck. But as you can see, our sideboard is $400, so please do not buy Primite to play in your Skull Servant deck. Just deal with losing going first. This doesn't even ensure you're gonna win. And then as you can see, I just threw a bunch of hand traps in here. It's probably not actually the Mulch Armies, but throw in like Ashes and other hand traps, because going first you can thin out the numbers of your Skull Servants and take out your going second stuff. Throw the Primite engine in there, throw a bunch of Drolls, throw some Ashes and stuff. The Mulchies are actually bad going first, but that's just, I wanted to see how expensive I could get the sideboard. Don't judge me. But anyways, that is going to be it for the deck profile. Let's get into a couple of combos. The deck doesn't have like crazy combos, but there's a couple things you can do thanks to Moissa Wight, so let's see those now. Alright, so while our combos consist primarily of using all 5 cards in our hand to fill our graveyard as much as physically possible, we do have some couple of 1-card combos that we can do to put something on the board at least. So let's get started. So this is Moissa Wight's 1-card combo. It's going to look the same to the other one, but we normal summon the Wight, grab Wight Baking, normal summon Wight Baking, use both to go into Vampire Sucker, which allows us to grab 2 cards, Wight Lord and... Here you can actually do a couple of things for the second one. Here we grab the King of the Skull Servants to ensure that we'll be able to get a King of the Skull Servants, but if you're hoping to high roll off the Wight Lord, we'll do that in the next combo. You can try and push further and just really hope you hit a King of the Skull Servants to bring back. But we grab the Wight Lord, the King, discard the King, then use Lord to dump a bunch more in the graveyard, then use Lord to bring back the King, and this is just the board. This is what we can do off of 1 card. We got a 6,000 giant guy, basically. Yeah, cool. And so this is going to be our 1-for-1 1-card combo, technically 1.5 because you have to discard a monster for 1-for-1 itself, and it's going to look very similar to the Moissa Wight one, but we're going to diverge and show you the other path where you kind of just hope to high roll and hit a king instead of grabbing one to ensure that you have one. Here we go. So, we activate the 1-for-1, discarding any monster to summon the Moissa Wight. Moissa Wight grabs Wight Baking, and you know this one because we're going to normal summon the Wight Baking and go into Vampire Sucker. This time we're going to grab Wight Prince to discard to send 2 extra cards to the graveyard. This is important because it allows us to mill another 3 off of the Wight Lord itself, and luckily here we did hit a King of the Skull Servants. You have to get lucky on this one. We can summon it back, and this one is 10,000. We draw our extra card off of Vampire Sucker, so you get a 10,000 King of the Skull Servants instead of 6,000. Otherwise, it's the same as the last combo, and this one requires luck. So, you know, that's on you. Personally, this deck's kind of high rolly anyways, so I would always do this one. But you know, maybe you're hoping that a 6,000 body can ride you through the opponent's first turn or something. Who knows? Cool. And so we're back with closing thoughts on our Skull Servant deck. Guys, this deck's really fun and funny. I mean, it's not the single strongest thing in the world, obviously. As you can see, we don't put up disruptions, which is a little bit scary because with other aggro decks like Mikonko or Tenpai, you can at least put up some level of disruption. We have trouble putting up like 1 or 2 even. It's not great. But, as you saw, we are really good at just fighting through some level of disruption on the opponent's end, and then just one-shotting them. And that is thanks to the fact that the only card in the entire deck that really matters is King of the Skull Servants. If the opponent cannot banish our King of the Skull Servants, we will kill them. Because even if they destroy it when it comes out, even if they know what the deck is trying to do and they destroy it, we have a bunch of ways to bring it back. We can bring it back with Wight Lord, we can bring it back with Mizuki, we can bring it back if we need to with Wight Prince, even though we'd rather not. It is kind of difficult to get rid of King of the Skull Servants unless they have a way to banish it. That's not often what people are doing these days, though maybe with like the Psychic support coming out, that deck's gonna wreck us. But as of right now, I feel like it's not that hard to stick a King of the Skull Servants, fill our grave with like so many cards, and just swing for 15,000. And surprisingly, a lot of people are not built to survive one big guy swinging for 15,000, and that's very, very funny to me. Oh, and then for the last thing I would like to note is that all of the entire Skull Servant engine itself is super rare and below in Master Duel, funny enough. So if you already have like the droplets and the super polys and the lightning storms just because they are staples, you can build the entire deck and just climb the ladder pretty easily because people are just not prepared to get smacked for 12,000 damage. And so that's a fun little fact. But anyways, that will do it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you have a good day, and I hope to see you next time. Cool? Cool.